And as a result, we didn't have a recession. We had a real estate bubble. That was the consequence of the economic stimulus of Bush and Greenspan. Now we're paying the price. Now, at the time, I was warning that this was going to happen. I was writing, in 2003 and 2004 about the incipient housing bubble, about what the disastrous consequences would be when the housing bubble burst. I was speaking all around the country. I just uploaded onto YouTube the other day, if you get a chance to look at it, a speech that I gave in 2006. And I gave the same speech in 2005 in front of the Western Regional Mortgage Bankers Association. There were 3,000 mortgage bankers in attendance. And the year before that, I was on the podium with the head of the National Association of Realtors, with the president of Bank of America, with the 4 or 5 top guys in the real estate market, telling them to their faces what was going to happen, exactly what was going to happen. And nobody would listen to me, nobody would believe it. But in any event, had we not stimulated the economy, had we let the recession run its course, there's no question that it would have been more severe than the recession that we had. But nobody can argue today, with the benefit of hindsight, that we're better off, that inflating the real estate bubble was a good idea. Because now what happened when that bubble burst? Right? Look at all the financial institutions that have collapsed. Look at the deficits that we've run up. All of this is the consequence of the stimulus under Bush. And so now we have to ask ourselves, all right, what are the consequences to what we're doing right now? Because the stimulus is basically the same. The only difference between the current stimulus and the stimulus under Bush is that this one is bigger. And this one is going to do even more damage. Alan Greenspan lowered interest rates to 1%. Now they're 0. I mean, if we did all that damage with 1% interest rates, what are we going to do with 0? And Bush ran up the deficits in a Keynesian attempt to, prime the pump and stimulate the economy, and he ran deficits of the magnitude of, what, 300 or 400 billion? That's just a few months. Under Obama, we're running a budget deficit this year of close to $2 trillion. $2 trillion. And even if you look at the congressional budget estimates, they're estimating that the deficits are $1 trillion a year or more for the next 10 years. I mean, what kind of budget is that? I mean, that's nonsense. You can't come out with a budget and say we're going to run $1 trillion deficits every year. I mean, that's like if your son comes home from school and he says, "Dad, I've got a new educational plan. I'm going to flunk every test I take for the next 10 years." What kind of plan is that? You can't go with that. Our leaders have to rethink what they're doing. We can't run these kind of deficits. Now, of course, the government thinks, well, it's okay, we'll just borrow the money. Like we don't have to pay it back. Like there's no interest associated with it. Well, the problem is, we can only borrow the money if there's someone dumb enough to lend it to us. And you know what? I think the supply of fools is running out.
Yes.
That's what's going to happen. When we inflated the real estate bubble, right, all the cheap money that the Fed created went into the real estate market, went into the stock market. Those bubbles have burst. It ain't going to happen that way again. Unfortunately, what's going to happen now, and the economic crisis that we are in the process of creating for ourselves, and it's not our children that are going to deal with it. We're going to deal with it right now. Our children don't have to stay here. There are plenty of countries around the world where they can emigrate to. I mean, I know, I'm investing there. We can't force them to stay here and pay for our mistakes, right? So what we need to do is change those mistakes before it's too late. What's going to happen is the Chinese and the Japanese and the Saudi, everybody else who's been buying our debt, they're not going to do it anymore. Now, there are people who are saying that's not going to happen. The world's going to lend us money indefinitely. Those are the same people who said that the internet stocks would keep going up. They're the same people who said there was no housing bubble. Right? They were wrong then, and they're wrong now. Yes, the Chinese have loaned us a lot of money, and they're going to take a hit on those losses. But you know what? They're going to move on. Because more important for the Chinese is not the $1 trillion that they've already loaned us, but the $5 to $10 trillion we're telling them they have to lend us over the next few years. Why would they want to do that? They already can't handle the losses, or they don't want to deal with the losses on $1 trillion. Why should they step it up? Why should they back up the truck and lend us another $5 or $10 trillion? Because we don't have it. The government wants to borrow $2 trillion. Where are they going to get it? Right? If the government is going to spend all this money, it's not free. There's no free lunch here. Right? If they don't take it from us in taxes, they're going to take it from us one way or another. And I think what's going to happen is the world is going to move away. Now, the reason we've been able to run these big deficits in the past is because we've had the world's reserve currency. The world has been willing to accept the paper that we print in exchange for the goods that they produce. But there's a limit to how long this can go. Because as the dollar starts to lose value, it creates a lot of problems around the world for our trading partners. Right now, America's biggest export is inflation. We print money and we spend it. And if you look around the world, that is causing a lot of problems in countries like China, where their money supply is going through the roof because their government has to create a lot of money to buy up all these dollars, and it creates inflation in China. It creates asset bubbles in China. The Chinese know this. Look at what they're doing. They're already encouraging their own citizens to buy gold. Why would they do that? If they were going to defend the dollar, why would they tell their people to buy gold? The Chinese just launched the first ever RMB denominated debt. Now, the Chinese government doesn't have to borrow money. They're in surplus. Why are they doing this? They are preparing the world for the RMB. I mean, it doesn't make any sense for the Chinese to borrow money and then turn around and loan it to the United States. They're doing this for a reason. Look at all the talk around the world about the need to move away from the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. This is going to happen. It is happening right now. And so if the US government tries to run these deficits, and if the world doesn't want to loan us the money, then what are they going to do? Well, the only choice that's left is to have Ben Bernanke supply it with a printing press. And that is going to lead to a real disaster. Because this crisis is going to end up being a currency crisis. It's going to be a crisis where the value of our money plunges. And that could even happen before the next election. There's no way to time it for sure. But the dollar could lose 50%, 60%, 70%, 80% of its value. What is that going to do? I mean, think about the economy today and imagine how much worse it's going to be if prices are spiraling out of control for basic consumer goods.